The path to paradise may begin in hell, but the bridge to hell, well, that starts right here in Queens. I had just arrived at Otis Bantam Correctional Center, one of the most violent wards in America's most violent jail, Rikers Island. No search, just a chain gang march through a maze of sinuous hallways before being thrown into a 10-by-10 holding cell meant for a couple of people. The problem was that there were 30 other detained men in there already, snorting white powder off pieces of plastic, smoking makeshift cigarettes and joints dipped in embalming fluid. Others threw up in the one toilet we all had to share. I looked down to see my shoes coated in a thick layer of dope-sick felon vomit, then looked around to see a phantasmagoria of drugs, cash, and weapons in every direction. Where are the guards? I looked back at the one who had escorted me in, who was now collecting money through the bars from men in the holding cell and handing off bags of a drug called K2, spice, synthetic weed laced with fentanyl. He nodded his head in my direction. "You need anything, bruh?" I wasn't sure how to answer that. Surveying the cell, there were a lot of men in dire need of something, like water or food or urgent medical attention, but it was clear that wasn't what he was asking. I thought about asking for a pen and paper before realizing I had both in my suit pocket, thanks to not being searched. "Hey, yo, officer!" a voice rang out from across the cell. "We got 3 guys over here in emergency situations. Need medical right now. 1 man asthmatic, 1 diabetic, 1 needs his seizure meds. Hurry!" The voice was right. All 3 looked like they were in dire straits. 1 was pale as a ghost. The second was slumped against the wall with both hands clutching his chest, and the third was fully unconscious on the ground. "1 sec." The guard stuffed the cash in his pocket and scurried off. I never saw him again. Midway along the journey of our life, I woke to find myself in a dark wood, for I had wandered off from the right path. I don't think this was the dark wood Dante had in mind, nor his path to paradise, but I could see hell dead ahead of me, literally. Just an hour ago, after being handcuffed, deposited into a cage and shackled to the floor of a moving vehicle, I'd found myself on the Rikers Island Bridge, commonly known as the Bridge to Hell. I had just come from downtown New York City, Manhattan Civil Courthouse to be exact, where the judge ordered that I was to be detained at Rikers until my next court date, which was 4 months from now. The year was 2021. Every 3 weeks on Rikers Island, detainees were sent home to their families in a box. A man died a few weeks before I arrived. Another man died shortly after I left. This is because describing Rikers as a jail would be using the wrong nomenclature. It's more of a secretive penal colony, a Dickensian nightmare, a pseudo-suicide factory. Men show up in street clothes to be detained until their next court date, still innocent under United States law, accused of a crime, convicted of nothing, simply in custody as they await their opportunity in the halls of justice. Well, that's how it's supposed to work, at least. Instead, they die at Rikers from lack of medical care or from suicide and get shipped out in a coffin. The mood in the holding cell was chaotic when I walked in. That changed over the next day as it became apparent we were totally on our own, with no guards, food, or medical care. The collective mindset of the cell turned bleak as the same realization slowly washed over each of us. People actually die here all the goddamn time. This is exactly how it happens, and there is an honest-to-God chance that I am next. That was when men began breaking down, many who had been there much longer than myself. All arguing and infighting had been replaced by a miasma of despair, primal screams and plaintive howls, hoarse voices and dry mouths, glassy eyes with nothing behind them, bloody fists smashing against concrete walls, and white-knuckled palms gripping the bars of the cell door. "Help!" I sat against the wall with my head in my hands, speechless. I had been writing to pass the time, notes to relay to the world when I made it out of here, but my hopes were now officially dashed. I tucked the pen and paper away in my pocket, closed my eyes, looked up, and threw a prayer to the big guy in the sky. If it's my time, I'm okay with that. I've lived a great life. You can hit the lights. All I ask, Lord, is that you let me die somewhere else, anywhere else, besides this hellhole." Like every good story ever told, this one begins in medias Rikers. How did I wind up at this island death camp? Let's rewind the VHS by 3 months. I was resting my head on a brown bag with a rotten bologna sandwich inside it. This had been my pillow for the past week because I was in jail. A different jail. See, Rikers was jail 2. There was a jail before the jail, and in between there was a rehab clinic. Sort of like an institutionalized Oreo cookie with crunchy jails on the outside and creamy rehab on the inside. It was April 2021. I'd just been arrested by the Manhattan District Attorney and taken to Gun Club, a violent county jail in West Palm Beach. I was charged with defrauding the government to the tune of millions of dollars, and I was as guilty as the day is long. I'd never been to a jail before, never arrested, never so much as an unpaid parking ticket. Now, at age 34, I was handcuffed in a holding cell, staring into the Nietzschean abyss, a toilet bowl filled to the brim with moldy bread, rotten fruit, and human feces. Might as well be a mirror, I thought, as I laid back down on the L-shaped metal bench and stared up at the rusted ceiling, breathing in the rank odor of sweat and recycled air, head resting on pungent bologna as I scribbled down notes on a brochure from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. The title on top was Live from Gun Club, also known as Page 1, Draft 1 of the book you're currently reading. Shortly after, I was transferred to Gen Pop, the general population section of the jail, where fistfights broke out like clockwork every 45 minutes. The hours gradually turned to days as I alternated between writing and watching people get the living daylights beaten out of them. It wasn't Rikers, but it wasn't the Aspen St. Regis either. "Everyone clear out!" An officer's booming voice echoed off the walls. Someone in the room had tested positive for COVID, which meant we all had to be relocated. Unfortunately, due to overcrowding and staffing shortages, the only open beds in the jail were in solitary confinement. My new home was about the size of a compact parking spot, and although solitary does accurately describe the room, I was joined in short order by 2 companions, despair and delirium. Eventually, 2 more companions arrived. They were detectives from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. I was released and spent the day in transit with them, boarding a commercial flight from Palm Beach International Airport to Newark, while wearing handcuffs and the same clothes I'd been in for a week. I'd never seen anyone in handcuffs at an airport. Judging from the looks on people's faces, they hadn't either. Things got worse as April turned to May. The investment firm I'd been managing for 2 years, Brattle Street Capital, was forced into dissolution, right as my case was picked up by the feds. The charges were the same as those of the Manhattan District Attorney, but it made the situation infinitely more complex. The summer of 2021 was shaping up to be an onslaught. Each new day of my life became 15 simultaneous games of 4-dimensional chess, blindfolded while fighting a land war in Asia. It felt like every government agency except the Bureau of Indian Affairs was involved. I checked myself into a rehab clinic for mental health, clearing my head to prepare for battle and writing anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 words per day. This whole business of incinerating your entire life, I don't recommend it, but it's certainly grist for the creative mill. I hadn't checked in planning to get sober, but after 3 weeks I decided to stick the flag in the ground and go for it, inadvertently adding one more front to the all-out battle. Getting arrested is hard. Having your first business fail is hard. Kicking booze and drugs, which requires rebuilding your life from scratch, is exceptionally hard, particularly when the life you're trying to rebuild is in the midst of a long, slow nuclear explosion. I sure picked the wrong week to stop sniffing glue, I found myself muttering while being chainsawed in half by a rotating array of bloodthirsty prosecutors. The hit